Hello everybody, this is Cheri at djsundry.blogspot.com, and I kind of have a different video setup that I am trying. Over the Thanksgiving holidays, I had to kind of move my craft room aside for family stuff, and because I share my craft room with the room where we keep the kids play their gaming system. And I wanted to give them a little bit more room. So I just kind of cleaned up and shoved everything into the corner. And as I was resetting up, I wanted to see if I could allow them always to have a little bit more room. So kind of bear with me as we play with video camera angles and things over the next couple of videos, because I'm not sure how the lighting situation is going to work out for my video. So if this one's a little bit blurry, I apologize in advance. And we'll work on it and get things fixed if I need to change things back up. But let's get on to the project. I wanted to make I'm going to alter a jar, and I've actually already finished the jar, one of them, but I want to show you the products that I used to finish the first jar, and then at the end of the video, I'll show you a still picture of the jar completely filled and everything. So the first thing that I needed were these little jars. They remind me of jelly jars. They're not very big. They're only a couple of inches. I think I paid like $1.49, and then I probably used a coupon with that for these at Joann's. And I probably have some in my canning supplies because I used to can, but I didn't grab any. I didn't go rummaging through to try to find any, so I just purchased these. I don't know that I have any this small. And for the swap, we needed them this small. And so I'm going to set this aside, and then I'll tell you what I did. I used some buttons from my stash, and I know that there's probably a glare on those. And then I just used some bronze or gold colored buttons. I used two different paints. The one that is complete, I used this pink chiffon pearl paint from Folk Art. And the one that I'm doing for myself, I used this Americana Black Plum. I used some lace. It's this lace, which is really pretty delicate lace from Really Reasonable Ribbon. And I wrap my lace and ribbon on popsicle sticks. If you haven't seen that in previous videos, it's just easier for me to be able to find what I need that way. So I have lots of those. I'm going to set this gorgeous ribbon aside, and we'll talk about that in a minute. I used Victorian Velvet Distress ink. I used some flowers from Studio G. I know there's a glare on there too. Plastic packaging. And then I used from Enamel Dots from My Mind's Eye, The Sweetest Thing by June Anderson. This is the Lavender Reasons Why. And I used one of these pink enamel dots. Gorgeous. And then I used this ribbon from 3 Girl Jam. This is brand new, and it's available at the 3 Girl Jam store right now. In fact, over this weekend, she's offering really big discounts. I don't know if this video will be live while the discounts are still going on, but check out 3girljam.com. This is from the Ribbon Candy Bundle. This is the red and white. And it is so pretty. It also, part of the bundle, the other part of the bundle is the green and white. This is a little bit different than last year's Christmas bundle, because last year's Christmas bundle had red and green, red on one side and green on the other. But I really like the way this is. And for what I'm doing, I wanted actually pink, and because it fades to pink in the middle, it was perfect for what I'm doing. So what I did is I had found on Pinterest, and maybe you've seen it, how people are altering jars using glossy Mod Podge and just basic food coloring. And I will put a link to where I learned to do this below in the video description, and then also on my blog. But this is the one that I made for me. As you can see, it's a little bit purple, and I combined red and blue food coloring to get this. I didn't buy the purple food coloring. And it's a process where you coat it, you mix water and the Mod Podge and the food coloring together, and you coat the inside of the jar, and then you let all the extra drain so that you don't have lots of spots and drip. I still ended up with some, and I doubt you can see it in the video, but there are some bubbles on the bottom, but they won't bother me at all. And then you let it sit for about an hour and start to dry, and then you put it in the oven for another hour. And this is how this one turned out. So pretty. And then I took my rings, and this is for a swap over at artandsassy.ning. .com, and I pulled this one from a canning jar that I had available because I needed it to measure while the others were drying. But what I did is I took a couple coats of Mod Podge, and I think for mine I may have even done 3 coats of Mod Podge to try to help it stick a little bit. And I learned that technique from Kara over at AK Caribou, and she mentioned how that on her she used Mod Podge, and I thought that would probably help it stick. And you still have to be careful, because even with the Mod Podge and the paint on top of the metal, unless you're using a metal paint, it does chip very easily, or at least mine did. Thankfully, where mine chipped on the one that I've completed, I was able to cover it up. So I painted it with a couple of coats of the Mod Podge, and then I did either 2 to 3 coats of the paint. I think I ended up with both of these doing 3 to make sure the Mod Podge was colored completely. Now this is the purple one that I've done, and this is very matte colored paint, and I haven't quite decided how I'm going to finish this off right now. This one is for me, but I will eventually, it will go on top of here. I don't know if I may sand some of it off to give it kind of a shabby chic look. I just haven't decided what I'm doing. And then I took the ring, or the flat part of the jar, and I took some muslin that I had just picked up at my Joann's Crafts, and I took some cotton or polyester, I guess, batting, and put it in here. And then that way I can use it for stick pins on top, which I've got quite a collection of stick pins going on here, so I'm looking forward to putting, I think this one that I received from my jar swap that I showed you a few days ago, I think that will be gorgeous on there, and I'll probably use this one for my purple colored stick pins. So I just used hot glue, and this is a mess underneath, but I will cover that and make it pretty, and I'll show you how I did that on the finished one. But eventually it will go on the jar, and this just pops right in there, and then you can just screw it on. Now you have to be careful as you're doing it that you don't have too much bulk, that this ring won't pop all the way in. So you want to pull it pretty taut. Now before I pop mine in on the other one, I did put a little bit of hot glue on the inside of the ring so that it wouldn't pop out as easily. So that's how I did the jar. So now let me talk about the one that I've done and that's all decorated. I was going for kind of a shabby chic color, or jar in this one, and this one I did, it looks pretty red here. I was going for pink. I was hoping it would be lighter. I should have put a little bit less food coloring, I think, but I think it coordinates okay. But it just gives it that sheen. Now if you make these jars, a word of warning is these are not okay for food consumption. Now if you want to put candies or something in there, you need to put them inside of a bag or something, because this is Mod Podge, and so it's just not really designed for eating purposes. But this is the pink one, and then this is the lid, the completed lid that I did. So you see the pink paint, that's this pearlized paint, and my initial plan was to sand some of that off and make it even just a little bit more shabby, but I decided just to leave it. And then I took that lace and I hot glued it all around the edge. Now right here, it's not very noticeable, and if I wasn't pointing it out you wouldn't see it, but this is how I know it didn't stick really well. I made a mistake with my hot glue and it got kind of too bulky or something right there, and so when I pulled it up, it pulled the paint and the Mod Podge with it, so be careful. Thankfully I was covering it with lace and it wasn't a problem, but I just put a small bead of hot glue around and hot glued the lace down, and it is not hardly noticeable at all. You would have to be looking at it pretty closely to notice that it was lace. Then here I took a couple of those pieces of flowers from Studio G and I hot glued them together, and then I put the sweetest thing little enamel dot on it right there, and then I tucked some of that 3 Girl Jam ribbon under, almost making like leaves of the flower, and I just kind of tucked it and hot glued it so that there's still some movement in it and some dimension, but it's still quite secure. Now to finish off the lid, this is kind of a fun thing that I did. On the bottom, I made a flower. Now I have never made a flower like this before, and I think I learned to do this watching a little Shabby Chic or something here on YouTube, and I'll put a link to her site. She makes gorgeous flowers. This does not even come close to comparing to hers. But I kind of took her concepts and kind of played with it a little bit and made my own. So what you have here, if you look at the bottom, and I want to be kind of gentle with it, I just took a piece of the muslin and I made circles much like this, and then they were too big, so I cut it down. And I know you cannot see this because it's almost iridescent, but I cut it down to a smaller size. And that formed the base of my flower. Then I took this tulle that I picked up at the craft store, and it's pink, and again, so sheer you can hardly see it, and I apologize for that. But I folded the circle in half. Let me show you on a larger one that you can see. I folded the circle in half like this, and for the tulle it didn't matter because it's so holey it can go through. But for the muslin, what I did is I put a little tiny dot of hot glue here. You could sew it and it would probably be even better, but I put a little dot of hot glue there and folded it in half and held it for a second. Then I put another little dab of hot glue here and folded it back in half like this and held that for a second, and it gave me this cone shape. And then I took that and I started with a layer of the tulle, and I did 4 of them, and I hot glued them from the center right to the center of my flower. Then I hot glued 4 of these muslin ones over the top, and then I hot glued 2 more of the little tulle ones, which you can barely see, I know, on camera, but I hot glued a couple more of the tulle ones on top. And then I secured it. I hot glued one of my buttons in the middle. Now, I didn't like just the plain white, so I took a little bit of, or the kind of off-white, so I took a little bit of the Tim Holtz Distress ink, and I distressed the edges of the tulle, or not the tulle, but of the muslin, just to bring out that pink just a little bit more. So now I can screw this on. Now my flower is still just a hair too bigger than maybe I should have gone a little bit smaller, but just bear that in mind when you're doing it. But then I have my finished jar. So there we have this. I hope that my swap partner will enjoy it, and I'm going to fill it full of goodies and get it in the mail. So thanks so much for stopping by today, and remember, take some time to enjoy the little things. Have a great day. Bye.